Here on the bench, we're going to tie the B.T.A. This is the Big Trout Attractor. This fly was responsible for one of my biggest fish of the year. It's a still water pattern I've been working on. You can fish this under an intermediate or with a floating line under an indicator. And you can see there's a few different variants of it. We'll start out with a size 14 jig hook. Then we're going to put a 3.3 tungsten bead on there. You want to start by putting the small end on the hook first. Once it's on, if it doesn't go, sometimes you have to rotate that bead 180 degrees to get it to slide up the shank. That was a lucky drop right there. This is the preferred thread for that fly. We're just going to come in and dress the hook. One of the things you want to make sure of is while you're dressing the hook that you can keep the line nice and flat. I really like to push that line clear down into that shank. Alright, now that we cut that, just want to make sure that you rotate that till the thread looks flat. Just get it nice and counterclockwise and keep your thread looking even. We're going to work our way back up to that head. We're going to use some of this Danville's medium copper wire. We're just going to tuck that in up behind the head there. Get some wraps going. And try to keep that thread flat and keep that wire running along the back there. So in the next step, we want to build this body up just a little bit. You can see that the copper wire is not covered, but you don't want to wrap in such a way that it starts to look like a braid or a weave. You want to try and keep the thread as flat as you can, so it looks more like that. And then we're going to leave a lot of room up here by the head, and then all this other area, we're going to fatten it up in between here and the shank. So we're just working that. Just spend a little bit of time. A little bit will go a long way on this fly. So we're going to throw a little whip finish on here just in case we break our thread. I tend to pull on that thread just a little harder than I should. I like to have some insurance knots there. Okay, now we're going to start wrapping this copper wire. So we want to make sure that we get a nice clean looking start point wrap there at the bottom. And then we're just going to work it up and try to keep it nice and even. Just think of how a bug is segmented. It's not segmented all weird. So I think it's important to, again, take your time on this part of it. It'll pay some dividends as you build this fly out. Okay, that's all you got to do. Now we're going to tie that thread in. Okay, so we're going to take our thread and come around. And we want to definitely come underneath that wire and over it. We're just going to wrap a few little figure eights there. Just until we can pull tight on it. And then I like to, again, another insurance knot. We'll throw a little whip finisher over there, a little overhand. And you just want to bend that wire right there. And then we'll come back and helicopter that. Make sure to smooth that little piece over so it doesn't have the ability to cut your thread or anything else. We don't want to let this neck area get too fat, so I want to keep it nice and thin right there. So now I need to put a piece of flash in, and I think for this fly, the secret sauce is this UV orange. And so you just need one strand. You can see as you peel it away, the orange just kind of goes. But the cool thing about this stuff is when you hit it with the light, you get that orange back. Okay, we're going to take this piece of this UV orange flash and just fold it over and hook it right up there by the line and get a few wraps on it. Okay, and that's pretty much it. You'll also notice that it's kind of pulled back at a V. I usually do that on purpose so that I can give them a little cut, and we'll trim those down later on. That'll make it easier to work with. So I've got this very old marabou. It's a red rock in furnace. We're just going to use about a half a dozen strands of that. Now we're going to take and shorten those up just a little bit. We want them to extend about twice the length of the hook body. We'll just wrap those in and fold them down in there with that flash. Let's get them locked in. A couple in front, a couple in behind. Then we'll give the fluffy end of that a trim. And we'll get rid of all those. Okay. Next up, we want to use some of this crystal Chenille perfect hatch in brown. And I usually just take the edge of that and just pull a little bit of that off to give me a string to work with. And it's kind of weird. I think it's better to tuck the string this way and just kind of bring your bobbin over the top of it and just drop it on to suck it into place. Then you can give it a couple of turns there over and under. And we're going to take this and we're just going to do 1.5 wraps is all. And that's when we'll start to pull that in. And be careful to push your tinsel back behind the head. And we're going to take this and give that a little bit of a cut there. Okay. You can see with a couple of whip finishes, that is the fly. We'll make sure to trim back behind the head. Give me a sec here and we'll show you what that looks like. So I'm going to throw a couple of whip finishes on here. Now you should put a little bit of glue on the strand, and this is the best stuff for that I've found. The reason I like this stuff is it has this nice little applicator brush, and you can just put just the tiniest amount on there, and that gives you the ability to really kind of dial in how much glue you want. If you just want the thread sticking to itself, then you just want to be careful to get it up underneath all those so you're not gluing them down into place. Get all those little fibers swept and pulled back with your thread, just like that. You can just kind of work them back in on your first rotation around, and then throw a couple of whip finishes on there, and we're going to have a finished fly. Okay, so this fly is not a springtime fly, at least in all the areas I tested it. What it is, though, is a midsummer fly, and I have fished this with an intermediate line, a type 1. I've also fished it under an indicator with a dry line. And I've had great success with both. I think it's more fun on a Type 1 setup and just long line it as deep as you can get it and then work it back up from the depths. And the trout seem to enjoy chasing it up. And let me show you what that UV feature looks like. You can see it just is covered in hot spots. So the young trout will hit it, so will the old. And then I'm going to shorten those up by, I like them to be just slightly longer than the marabou, so we'll bring them back to about there. But that's your finished fly.